Why should you play Jhin, the Virtuoso? Well, if you want to be able to do this, Jhin is the newest marksman added to League of Legends, and so he's had very few nerfs. Besides being able to do what you saw in the video, Jhin is actually a very fun champion to play due to the incredible carry potential he has. He also has two abilities with insanely long range, so you can be in the fight from afar. And also lately, Jhin has been carrying me in ranked, and I have been melting through teams like a hot knife going through butter. So let's get started with the guys, shall we? As with many other immobile ADCs, we want to pick Jhin against an enemy team that has mostly squishy champions. This late game you can most likely 1 or 2 shot them. We can also pick Jhin against champions that rely heavily on how they do early to be good late game. An example of this would be Jinx. She needs to either farm really well, which you can just push the wave under her turret so she misses a lot of CS, or she needs to poke you out of lane, which won't happen obviously because you have so much damage from your 4th auto attack, your Q, and even your Deathfire touch. You should also make sure that your team picks at least one tanky champion, preferably your support, so they can peel for you while you fight and get kills, since the only escape you have is pretty much only flash and is very unreliable. We do not want to pick Jhin against a team that has many tanky champions since her damage output will be extremely lowered. Also, we don't want to go against assassins like Zed or champions that can easily make it to the backline like Olaf or Volibear. Lastly, we want to avoid early game ADCs like Ezreal who can dodge her skill shots and easily poke us out of lane. If you do pick Jhin first, and then they pick one of these champions against you, ask your team to make sure to peel for you in fights, because if you survive, the amount of damage you'll be able to do will be incredible and can easily win any fight. Now let's talk about some pros and cons for this champion. For Jhin, you have a guaranteed crit every 4th auto attack, which increases in damage the lower your target has HP. This is great for trading, and it's what lets Jhin 1 or 2 shot squishies in the late game. Despite being immobile, your passive almost makes up for it by giving you a short burst of movement speed whenever you crit. This makes chasing enemies a lot easier, or maybe even outrunning them. Late game, when you have 70% or more crit chance, you'll feel like you have a Ghost Summoner spell on because of all the movement speed you have. Jhin is also quite the safe laner. With the range of your abilities, you can poke and not take any damage against most enemy ADCs. You also have a nice snare with your W and a slow from your E. Your ultimate also has an insane range, so you can pick up kills even from your tower. Playing Jhin will teach you how to position yourself and who to focus. That's because if you get caught out as Jhin, there's a very high chance you will die, and if you're not focusing the right person, you'll be wasting your damage and probably die because of it. Always aim for squishes, and then you can focus the tank's best on who is carrying the most. Alright, now let's go ahead and move on to the cons. Jhin is as weak as the dead leaf, so you have to make sure you make up for it by building full AD and doing as much damage as you can as fast as possible in fights, so that if you die, at least you were able to kill the high priority targets, and then your team is only left to clean up what's left. Alright, and now Jin's mobility will make you cringe, and this is a fact, because not being able to do anything when an enemy gets in your face is really annoying, and they pretty much will out damage you most of the time if they're more fed than you or they're a tank. I've also gotten to the point that I know if my flash is down and a Volibear gets to my face, I just stop moving and just farm dance because I know I have already died. That's assuming he hasn't used Swirling Thunder though. In that case, like I said previously, just kite him with your crits, movement speed, and then your snare and snare and E. I'm sorry. Lastly, if you're not good with positioning, you will have a hard time. Much more than any other ADC, Jhin is heavily dependent on how you position yourself in fights to make split-second decisions. Your W could either be a lifesaver, or you could win a team fight with it if you snare the right person. Make sure you keep this in mind. Alright, now let's talk about his abilities. His passive is called Whisper. Jhin creates 4 bullets and has to reload once they are used up or you don't attack anything for a while. Jin's final bullet will always critical strike and deal bonus execute damage based on the target's percent missing HP. But his critical strike damage from this attack is reduced by 25%. Whenever Jhin crits, it inspires Jhin with a burst of movement speed which scales off of your attack speed. Jhin also passively gains bonus attack damage based on his critical chance strike, attack speed, and attack damage. His Q is called Dancing Grenade. Jhin launches the cartridge at a target enemy that can bounce to another nearby target that has yet to be hit. It can hit up to a total of 4 targets. Each enemy killed by dancing grenades increases its damage of subsequent hits by 35%. His W is called Deadly Flourish. Jhin fires a long-range shot that stops on the first champion hit, dealing 65% of that damage to minions and monsters hit along the way. If Deadly Flourish strikes a champion that has been hit by one of Jin's basic attacks, Lotus Traps, or an allied champion within the last 4 seconds, it will root them in place. Also, Jhin gains movement speed as though he had crit them. This ability has an insane range of 3,000 meters, I believe. His E is called Captive Audience. Jhin places an invisible Lotus Trap at the targeted location that lasts up to 2 minutes and activates when stepped on, revealing nearby enemies for 4 seconds. The trap leaves behind a zone that slows down enemies inside by 35% and detonates after 2 seconds. Jhin can store up to 2 of these at once. This also has a passive ability that whenever Jhin kills an enemy champion, a Lotus Trap will spawn and detonate where they were killed shortly after. This is great because in teamfights where the enemy team is all bunched up together and you kill someone, a trap will detonate where they died and do massive AoE damage to the enemy team. I once got a quadra kill just from this passive by killing someone with my ultimate and then that exploding and exploding again and exploding again, and eventually got a quadra kill. Lastly, his ultimate is called Curtain Call. Jhin sets up and channels for 10 seconds, enabling him to fire up to 4 super shots at 25,000 range in a cone in front of him. The shots stop on the first champion hit, slowing them by 80% for 0.75 seconds and dealing increased damage by 2% for each 1% health the target is missing. The 4-shot crits for an extra insane amount of damage. If cancelled early, Curtain Call's cooldown is refunded by 10% for each unused shot. There's only one realistically viable leveling order for this champion, and it's the following. You want to put a point into your ultimate whenever it's available, then max your Q first because it has great damage for laning phase and makes trades easily winnable if it lands on a champion which had previously killed any minions. Secondly, max your W for increased root duration, and lastly your E because it is our least used ability in our kit. Now for the runes and masteries, what we use for the runes are the Armor Pen Reds for better traits against enemy champions and better late game scaling. We do sacrifice some damage to minions, but gain more damage against champions. Also the attack damage quints for the extra damage as we don't need the attack speed early. Now for the masteries, we go for sorcery because we rely more on ability damage rather than attack speed since we don't really scale up that much of attack speed except our passive. Also Death Fire Touch is an insane for harass and even secures kills if you lead them with very little HP. In fact, a lot of my kills come from Death Fire Touch executing them. Alright, now for the 3 different build paths I have set up. This is the build we go for if we're either winning the lane or we're going even. I always aim for BF Sword on my first back, but if I have to back before I can afford it, I usually buy Long Sword for the Warhammer. If on my second back I can buy BF Sword, I will take it and go back to building Infinity Edge. The reason I get Infinity Edge first instead of Essence Reaver, like a lot of pros, is that I believe damage spike from the Infinity Edge passive is much stronger than the Essence Reaver's mana and CDR passive. But if you think otherwise, you're free to switch the build order of those 2 items as it will not affect your late game at all. Also, choose Static Shift if your team lacks Wave Clear or the enemy team is good at sieging. Rapid Fire Cannon is only good for the extra range which you might need to secure certain kills, but basically it's the exact same stats as Static Shift. As for the last 3 items, it's dependent on the situation. Go for Mime if they have a mage that is constantly killing you. Bloodthirster if either you're really fed or the other 2 situational items are not needed. Lastly, Scimitar if there's a lot of CC or there's a Z. The second build path. This is the build you want to have if you lost the lane, you were camped, or you just did really bad early. We rush Essence Reaver because we're going to want to farm more and make up for our early mistakes, and we will be farming with our skills, so we need that mana back. Then we go for the shift for the Wave Clear and better farming, and lastly we go for Guardian Angel since we missed our chance of getting fed early and are probably already fed by late game. So we want to survive as long as we can so we can try to do as much damage as possible so that we can win the game. And lastly, the last build, which is the least popular one. This is a build that I tried out from a guide on LoL King called the Jhin Bible. I tried it a few times and it works best when your team is doing really well. You reach over 800 attack damage and you have 100% crit, which means more movement speed and more damage from your passive. Alright, now let's talk about our 3 different phases in the game. Firstly is laning phase. If you have an aggressive support like Blitzcrank, Thresh, or Leona, then you can go either ping or wait until they do something so you can follow them. If you have a passive support like Soraka or Janna, you can just farm without any worries of the enemy engaging on you. Normally I like to get to level 2 first before wanting to do anything. I played safe early and tried to freeze the wave if we're going to either go even in lane or I'm winning the lane. I focus on farming more so I can quickly get my IE, but also try to farm and poke at the same time with my Q. I love poking with my empowered Q, 4th bullet, and then W snare for the bunch of damage. And after a while, your enemy team is going to begin to wear down for your damage and your keystone damage. I do want to mention you have a bit of high mana cost, so make sure not to spam your abilities on the minions. If not, you'll be pushing the lane, making yourself susceptible to gank for you going to overextend and farming. Now for mid game, by now you most likely have reached your power spike and are starting to become stronger. Now the jungler mid laner might start to combo more often, so make sure you have the river and try bush ward at all times. You want to look for a fight with the enemy ADC and maybe even ask the jungler for some help because you need that turret so you can start roaming and getting kills as well. You and your team can now start grouping at the mid lane to take some towers and force fights, since your skills have so much range and the mid lane has the shortest, it's basically the shortest lane, which means your ability have more effectiveness. This is where you start spiking and your damage starts showing. By the way, make sure not to forget to farm no matter how fed you are or how much you're roaming. If your enemy ADC keeps farming, they can make a comeback, so make sure you keep your advantage by farming as well. Late game. Now's the time to show how good you are with Jhin. Your positioning and your focusing will either win or lose you the game. You have to be careful because even though you may be dealing the most damage out of both teams, you can also die super easily because since it's late game, the enemy team might also have full builds. If your team is able to initiate while you stay behind, you should ultimate and quickly kill the carry and the squishies. Then you'll be able to win those fights. Also, by now tanks mean nothing since you have so much damage, so much movement and armor penetration that no tank stands a chance. And that's it for the guide, guys. I did put a lot of work and thought into this guide, so I'd appreciate it if you let me know how I did with this guide, as it was my first full guide. I did stutter a couple times because this is my first time doing something like this and talking for so long. I did make a script for this as well, and you know, I really like the way this went. And if you did like it and learn something, leave a like and feel free to subscribe. This is definitely something I want to try again and keep doing, because not only do I teach people about the champion, but I also learn a little bit about the champion as well by making these guides. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, and see you guys next time. Take care.